My friends, if you have diabetes and you wake up every morning to a blood sugar reading that is already high, before you have eaten a single thing, I want you to know that you are not doing anything wrong. That reading is not a failure. It is a biological event that happens to roughly half of all people with type 2 diabetes. It has a name, it has a mechanism, and most importantly, it has a solution that almost nobody talks about. It is called the dawn phenomenon, and it starts while you are still asleep. But here is the part that I really want you to hear today. What time you eat breakfast, and whether you eat it at all, can either multiply the damage from the dawn phenomenon or dramatically reduce it. A study published in Diabetes Care found that on days when people with type 2 diabetes skipped breakfast, their blood sugar after lunch was 37% higher than on days when they ate breakfast. And their blood sugar after dinner that same day was 27% higher from an identical meal. No different food, no different portion, just the absence of breakfast. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly what is happening in your body between 3 a.m. and 9 a.m., why the timing of your first meal has such a powerful effect on the rest of your day, and the specific breakfast window that research now points to as the best choice for seniors over 60 managing diabetes. I will also show you 2 foods to eat at that first meal that work specifically against what the dawn phenomenon does to your blood sugar. And I will show you the one thing that most seniors do at breakfast that actually makes the dawn phenomenon worse, even when they think they are eating carefully. Let me start by explaining what the dawn phenomenon actually is. Because most people with diabetes have heard the term, but very few understand exactly why it happens. Every morning, between approximately 3 a.m. and 8 a.m., your body releases a surge of hormones: cortisol, growth hormone, glucagon, adrenaline. These hormones are part of a natural wake-up signal, your body preparing itself for the demands of the day ahead. As part of that preparation, these hormones instruct your liver to release stored glucose into your bloodstream. The idea is to give you fuel to wake up and function. In a person without diabetes, the pancreas responds to this glucose release with a matching surge of insulin, and blood sugar stays stable. But in type 2 diabetes, where insulin production is already reduced and cells are already resistant to the insulin that is produced, the body cannot keep up with that morning glucose release. Blood sugar rises. And by the time you wake up and check your reading, it can already be elevated by 30 to 80 points before you have touched a single piece of food. The Cleveland Clinic confirms that the dawn phenomenon affects approximately half of all people with type 2 diabetes. If your morning readings have always confused you, this may be exactly why. Now, here is where breakfast timing enters the picture. And this is where it changes everything. Because the dawn phenomenon has already raised your blood sugar before you wake, your blood sugar is in a heightened state when you begin your morning. Your liver has been releasing glucose for hours. Your insulin response is already lagging behind. What you do next, specifically when and what you eat, either adds to that pile or begins to bring it down. Here is the paradox that trips most seniors up. Many people with diabetes skip breakfast because they think, reasonably, that eating less will keep blood sugar lower. If my reading is already high, why would I add more food? But the research shows the opposite happens. When you skip breakfast and extend the overnight fast into mid-morning or noon, several things occur simultaneously. Your free fatty acid levels rise throughout the morning because your body, sensing no incoming food, begins breaking down fat for fuel. Those rising free fatty acids trigger a further increase in insulin resistance over the next 3 to 6 hours. And because no breakfast meal has stimulated your pancreas to release insulin, the beta cells, the insulin-producing cells, go essentially unstimulated through the entire morning. The result, as confirmed in that diabetes care clinical trial, is that when you finally eat lunch, the identical meal on both test days, your blood sugar spike is 37% higher on the breakfast skipping day. Your body has spent the entire morning building insulin resistance, and lunch pays the price. Skipping breakfast to protect your morning reading does not protect your blood sugar. It multiplies the problem across the entire rest of your day. Now, if breakfast must be eaten, the next question is the one this video is really built around. And the answer is going to contradict what many seniors with diabetes have been told their whole lives. Stay with me. What is the best time to eat it? Because not all breakfast timings produce the same blood sugar outcome. And the research now gives us a clear direction. A 2024 randomized controlled trial published in the journal Diabetes and Metabolic Syndrome, conducted at Australian Catholic University, tested breakfast at 3 different times in adults with type 2 diabetes: 7 a.m., 9:30 a.m., and 12 p.m. The finding was striking. Breakfast eaten at 9:30 a.m. reduced postprandial blood sugar, the spike after eating, more effectively than breakfast eaten at 7 a.m. The mid-morning meal, eaten approximately 2 to 2.5 hours after waking, allowed the cortisol surge from the dawn phenomenon to begin subsiding naturally before food arrived. That window gave the body a chance to partially clear the morning hormone storm before adding the glucose challenge of a meal on top of it. Now, I want to be precise about this research because you deserve accuracy. This was a small trial of 14 participants, 11 of whom completed the full protocol. It is meaningful, but it is early-stage evidence. It points us in a direction without the certainty of a large-scale trial. What gives it real weight is that it aligns perfectly with the biology. Cortisol, the primary driver of the dawn phenomenon, peaks around 8 a.m. and begins declining shortly after. Eating at 7 a.m. means eating at the cortisol peak, when insulin resistance is at its morning high. Eating at 9:30 a.m. means eating as that peak begins to fall, when the body is moving back into a more insulin-responsive state. Now, a large study tracking over 103,000 adults from the Nutrinet Sante cohort found that people who regularly ate breakfast after 9 a.m. had a significantly higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes than those who ate before 8 a.m. This appears to contradict the 2024 trial, but the distinction matters. The Nutrinet Sante study was measuring people who habitually delayed breakfast well past 9 a.m., a pattern that, in practice, often means irregular eating, near skipping, or a shortened overall meal window. The 2024 trial was a deliberate, controlled 9:30 a.m. delay, not a late or irregular eating pattern. Different behavior, different outcome. My practical recommendation, based on the full evidence together, is this: do not skip breakfast. The evidence against skipping is overwhelming and consistent. Do not eat the moment you wake up, especially if your morning reading is already elevated. Eating at peak cortisol, around 7 a.m. or earlier, stacks a food glucose challenge on top of the morning hormone surge. The sweet spot for most seniors with diabetes over 60 is between 8 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. This gives cortisol time to begin its natural decline while keeping your breakfast close enough to waking that you avoid the insulin resistance spiral of a prolonged morning fast. Now, what you eat at that breakfast matters as much as when you eat it, especially given what the dawn phenomenon has already done before you even open your eyes. By the time you wake up, your bloodstream already contains elevated glucose that your insulin cannot fully clear. Your insulin is behind. Your cells are resistant. This is not the morning to add a high-carbohydrate meal on top of an already stressed system. Eating a high-carbohydrate breakfast, even one that would be considered moderate or healthy on any other day, On top of already elevated morning. Blood sugar is like pouring water into an already full glass. It overflows, and it compounds the extended dawn phenomenon, a well-documented pattern where the morning glucose elevation continues well past breakfast because of the combined effect of the cortisol surge and a high glycemic first meal. This is not the time for oatmeal with fruit and juice. This is the time for protein and fat first. Food number one, eggs. 2 to 3 eggs, scrambled, poached, boiled, any preparation without added sugar. Provide high-quality complete protein with virtually zero carbohydrate load. Protein does stimulate a small insulin response, which is actually beneficial in this context. It gently activates your beta cells and nudges insulin into action without adding glucose to a bloodstream that is already carrying too much. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that a high-protein breakfast significantly reduced the postprandial glucose spike compared to a high-carbohydrate breakfast of equivalent calories. In the context of the dawn phenomenon, where your blood sugar is already elevated and your insulin is already stretched thin, a protein-first breakfast is the single most effective food tool you have for keeping that morning spike from compounding into your entire day. Eggs also deliver all 9 essential amino acids needed for muscle protein synthesis, which is especially important for seniors at risk of sarcopenia, the muscle loss that accelerates after 65, and that cannot be addressed with carbohydrates alone. Food number two, a small handful of raw walnuts or almonds eaten alongside the eggs. A meta-analysis of 12 randomized controlled trials published in PLOS One, conducted by researchers at the University of Toronto, found that diets emphasizing tree nuts at approximately 2 ounces per day significantly lowered both HbA1c and fasting blood glucose in people with type 2 diabetes. The reduction in HbA1c was statistically significant, with a p-value of 0.0003, a strong signal across the trials. The mechanism is directly relevant to morning eating. The healthy fats, magnesium, and fiber in walnuts and almonds slow gastric emptying and blunt the rate at which any carbohydrates at breakfast enter the bloodstream. Even if you include a small amount of whole grain toast or a few berries alongside your eggs, eating a handful of nuts with them measurably flattens the glucose curve that follows. In the morning, when your glucose curve is already starting from an elevated baseline, anything that further flattens the post-meal rise gives your insulin the extra time it needs to catch up. That is exactly what the nuts provide. Now, the warning I promised you. The one breakfast habit that most seniors with diabetes are doing right now, thinking it is helping them, that is actually making the dawn phenomenon significantly worse. Orange juice. A single glass of orange juice, typically 200 to 250 milliliters, contains around 20 to 25 grams of fast-absorbing sugar with virtually no fiber to slow it. Eaten at breakfast, when your blood sugar is already elevated from the dawn phenomenon. That sugar enters your bloodstream rapidly and pushes blood glucose to levels that can take 3 to 4 hours to come back down. This is the extended dawn phenomenon in action. The morning hormone surge raises blood sugar. The high glycemic breakfast compounds it. And the result is elevated blood sugar that carries all the way through the morning and in many cases into lunch, directly driving the kind of sustained hyperglycemia that shows up in your HbA1c reading 3 months later. The same principle applies, to a lesser degree, to sweetened yogurt and instant oatmeal eaten as a primary breakfast food. But orange juice is the most concentrated source of morning glucose and the easiest to remove. If you currently drink juice with breakfast, swap it for water, black coffee, or unsweetened green tea. That single swap, made at the 8 to 9:30 a.m. window we discussed, will do more for your morning blood sugar than almost anything else I could recommend. Let me bring everything together. The dawn phenomenon raises your blood sugar between 3 a.m. and 8 a.m. every single morning, not because of anything you eat, but because of the hormones your body releases to prepare you for the day. Half of all people with type 2 diabetes experience it, and your morning reading being high is not your fault. Skipping breakfast in response does not help. It multiplies the insulin resistance that builds through the morning and raises your blood sugar after lunch and dinner by up to 37%. The best time to eat breakfast if you have diabetes over 60 is between 8 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. After the cortisol peak begins its natural decline, but well before the morning fast builds significant insulin resistance. Not at 7 a.m. on top of peak cortisol. Not skipped until noon. Make that breakfast high in protein and healthy fat. Eggs, a small handful of raw walnuts or almonds. No juice, no sweetened yogurt. No instant oatmeal as your first food. My friends, your next breakfast is your first opportunity. Make it count. Leave me a comment right now. Tell me two things. What time do you usually eat breakfast? And what does that first meal look like? I want to know, because your answers will shape exactly what I cover next. I read every single comment. Now, before I go, I want to leave you with something that will stay with you. We talked today about the dawn phenomenon and how breakfast timing affects your blood sugar in the morning. But there is a second phenomenon, much less discussed and equally important, called the second meal effect. What you eat at breakfast does not just affect your blood sugar at breakfast. Research shows it directly influences how your blood sugar responds to lunch 3 to 4 hours later, even when lunch is identical. And there is one specific breakfast composition that reduces the lunch spike by more than any other. Next video, I will show you exactly what that breakfast looks like, why it works, and how to build it in under 5 minutes every morning. Make sure you are subscribed and the notification bell is on. I will see you there. Until then, my friends, take care of your body. Your next breakfast is closer than you think. Good night and God bless.